Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
All right, with all of this, political posturing, and that's all it is going on in this disinformation campaign that's being pushed out by Republican lawmakers and our Secretary of State and even our Attorney General, who's trying to give an impression without saying fraud because he can't. To people who want to believe the worst about America, and that is that we don't have free and fair elections anymore. Ever since Donald Trump, we don't have free and fair elections anymore. Is sick. It's sick, but it is ongoing. And in the middle of all of this, disorienting talk, and that's all it is disorienting talk, the Supreme Court, as we told you they would on November 10th, today is November 10th, heard the case that was brought by red states to overturn the entire Affordable Care Act based on the fact that the individual mandate is no longer is zeroed out. Okay, that there is no penalty for going without insurance in this country, and everyone else has to pay for you should you end up in the emergency room, or should you need, COVID care. And now we all have to pay for you out of our premiums. But it doesn't, I just pulled a couple of clips from the oral argument, and it just doesn't seem like the Supreme Court is in the mood to strike it down. Why do I say that? Because the only thing you were listening for, I told you, this is a case that in legal terminology would be decided on severability, right? Somebody asked me that a couple months ago. What is the case about? The case is about whether or not the whole law fails because the individual mandate, which is just a paragraph or two in the law, was zeroed out. And I gave the example of any contract you ever sign, okay? Any contract you ever sign has a severability clause in it, meaning if one paragraph of the contract becomes moot, meaning it doesn't apply anymore, things have changed, whatever, does the rest of the contract fail? And the answer is no. No. The other paragraphs that are still relevant to your employment or whatever you signed a contract for, to your purchase of the land or whatever, still is in full force and effect. So that's what the Supreme Court is considering. They're considering whether or not the ACA falls on severing the individual mandate, and they didn't even sever it, they just zeroed it out. Well, John Roberts, the Chief Justice, said, we have to figure out what Congress intended here. And it just seems to me that they didn't intend to strike down the law. And we know this kind of because John McCain gave it a thumbs down when it came up for a vote, remember? And it failed to be repealed. So the intent of Congress is a known thing. It is knowable. And I think that Congress thought, we don't have to repeal it. The court will do that. And guess what? That's not our job.
I think it's hard for you to argue that Congress intended the entire act to fall if the mandate were struck down when the same Congress that lowered the penalty to zero did not even try to repeal the rest of the act. I think frankly, that they wanted the court to do that, but that's not our job.
That's how simple it is. It's not our job. If Congress intended to strike down the law, Congress could have struck down the law. And the first thing that the Supreme Court does in a case like this is try to ascertain the intent of Congress when they passed a law or when the law came up for a vote to repeal. Well, the repeal failed. Therefore, Congress did not intend to strike it down because Congress failed to strike it down. You see what I mean? Now, today was Amy's first day, and she asked the same thing. What was the intent of Congress, do you think?
What should we make of the fact that Congress didn't repeal the provision? I mean, you said earlier repeal, and then you corrected yourself and said zeroed out. I mean, you're asking us to treat it as if it functionally has been repealed, but that's not what Congress did. Does that matter?
Your Honor, I think Congress understood how this court had construed 5000A as a choice, and it understood that it would make the provision effectively inoperative to zero out the tax. And that was a reasonable thing for it to do. Obviously, it was operating under reconciliation procedures. That allowed it to make the change compliant with the Byrd rule, and CBO had told it that there was no material difference between repealing the provision and zeroing out the tax.
So that's the lawyer, that's the solicitor from California who is defending the ACA. And she asked, well, you know, Congress failed to strike it down, so doesn't it matter what the intent of Congress was? And he said, yes. And you know that when they zeroed out the individual mandate, they zeroed it out. They did. But they didn't strike down the whole law. So there you go. That's just a lot of legal words to tell you what I just told you. The Supreme Court is looking to find what did Congress intend to have happen to the ACA. Clearly, they did not intend to strike down the entire ACA. They intended to zero out the individual mandate charge, the $692 a year. And that is what they did. So I don't think that the ACA is going to fall. Just don't. Janine in Hawaii.
Hey, Randy.
Hey.
Love you, girl.
Thank you.
Okay. I am today, Pompeo said, yeah, we're ready for a transition to Trump.
I saw that.
And then he very specifically mentioned the electors in December. Mitch McConnell, was it this morning, talked very specifically about waiting for the electors in December. And Bill Barr, I'm not sure if he said it specifically, but definitely was alluding to the elector process in December.
Yeah.
I think they're ready to steal it this way. I think they're not giving up. I think this is the last resort. I know you were the one that talked about it first a couple months ago.
Sending a different slate of electors?
Yeah. I think that. Think about Trump. He's
right.
going to think of anything he can.
I understand that they're going to try and make the case. Okay, first they're going to try to delay certification by Pennsylvania, especially Pennsylvania, because that's the difference between Biden and a Trump presidency. All right. Federal law does not permit a state legislature to choose a new way of selecting the electors unless it can show that the voters failed to make a choice. Now, the only states where that is at just slightly possible, okay, is Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona. If those state legislatures should send a second set of electors, it won't matter.
I think that if they tried that at that point,
it won't matter.
There will be riots in the streets from us.
What I'm saying is, it won't matter. It doesn't matter. Biden will still have 270 electoral votes.
Yep.
So
I believe they're not going to steal it, but I think that's their final plan because of the little twinkle that Mitch had in his eye when he said it, and the big twinkle and the doofy smirk that Pompeo had when he said it.
Okay, let me just tell you this. Mitch McConnell hates Donald Trump. What Mitch McConnell wants is to use Donald Trump for whatever he's still worth to him. And what Donald Trump is still worth to Mitch McConnell is the Senate majority. And that will come down to a January 5th runoff in Georgia for 2 Senate seats. Right now, it's 48-48 with 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats but don't count as a majority, right, toward the majority. And so we need Ossoff and we need Warnock in Georgia. That election has nothing to do with this one. It is a separate thing. No, you don't have to re-register. You just go vote in that election, okay? And
send some money to Stacey Abrams. She's Georgia Senate, something like that.
Send it to Ossoff. Send it to Warnock. However, That is a separate election, and Mitch McConnell is not going to piss off Donald Trump until that one is done, because Donald Trump will attack Mitch McConnell. He will attack the Republican senators. He will attack the Republican Party. And they don't want that bad PR ahead of an election that's going to figure out who has the majority in the Senate. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.